Welcome back to another inspiring episode of Journey to Success. I'm Emily Carter, your host, and today we're diving into a topic that touches every single one of us at some point in our lives: overcoming fear. Joining us is an exceptional guest, Dr. Rachel Thompson, a celebrated psychologist, best-selling author, and keynote speaker who's helped thousands conquer their fears and unlock their true potential. Rachel, it's such a thrill to have you with us today. Thank you, Emily. I'm truly honored to be here and explore a subject that's so universal, yet so transformative when we learn to navigate it. I can't wait to dig in. Fear is something we all face, whether it's fear of failure, rejection, or even success. Rachel, let's start big picture. Why is overcoming fear so critical to personal growth and success? That's a fantastic question, Emily, and it gets to the heart of why I'm so passionate about this topic. Fear is like an invisible gatekeeper. It can hold us back from pursuing our dreams, taking risks, or even embracing who we truly are. But when we learn to move through fear, we unlock doors to possibilities we never imagined. It's not about eliminating fear. It's about building the courage to act despite it. I think of someone like Malala Yousafzai, the youngest Nobel Peace Prize laureate. As a teenager, Malala faced unimaginable fear advocating for girls' education in Pakistan, even surviving an assassination attempt by the Taliban. Yet, she said, "I don't want to be remembered as the girl who was shot. I want to be remembered as the girl who stood up." Her ability to push through fear transformed her life and inspired millions. That's the power of overcoming fear. It doesn't just change you, it can change the world. When I started my career as a psychologist, I had my own fears: fear of not being good enough, fear of public speaking. I was terrified of standing in front of an audience. But I realized that if I let those fears control me, I'd never fulfill my purpose of helping others. So I took small steps, and each one built my confidence. Overcoming fear is about taking ownership of your life's narrative. That's such a powerful perspective, Rachel, and Malala's story is a stunning example. You mentioned taking small steps to overcome your fear of public speaking. Can you walk us through how someone can start tackling their fears, especially when they feel overwhelming? Absolutely, Emily. The first step is to acknowledge your fear. Denying it only gives it more power. Name it, whether it's fear of failure, judgment, or the unknown. Once you identify it, you can begin to dismantle it. I often use a technique called fear setting, inspired by entrepreneur Tim Ferriss. Instead of just setting goals, Tim suggests writing down the worst-case scenarios of what you're afraid of, then brainstorming ways to mitigate or recover from them. This makes fear feel less like a monster and more like a puzzle to solve. Let me share a personal example. Early in my career, I was invited to speak at a national psychology conference. I was petrified. I imagined forgetting my lines or boring the audience. So I did a fear-setting exercise. I wrote down, what's the worst that could happen? I stumble over my words and people lose interest. Then I listed solutions, practice my speech relentlessly, have notes handy, and focus on connecting with just one person in the room. By preparing for the worst, I felt empowered to face the stage. That talk ended up being a turning point in my career, leading to my first book deal. I also looked to people like Steven Spielberg, who faced rejection early on. His first pitch for Jaws was met with skepticism, and he feared the project would flop. But Spielberg leaned into his fear, refining his vision and trusting his instincts. The result? A cinematic masterpiece. The lesson here is to break your fear into manageable steps. Practice, prepare, and take action, even if it's imperfect. I love the idea of fear setting. It's so practical. And Spielberg's story shows how fear can be a catalyst for greatness. But what about those moments when fear feels paralyzing, like it's physically stopping you? How do you push through that? Oh, Emily, those moments are real, and they can feel like hitting a brick wall. When fear becomes paralyzing, it's often because our brain's amygdala, the fear center, is in overdrive, screaming, danger. The key is to calm that response and shift your focus. One powerful tool is mindful breathing. By taking slow, deep breaths Inhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 4, exhaling for 4. You signal to your brain that you're safe. It's like hitting the reset button. I learned this from working with a client named Jessica, a talented graphic designer who is terrified of pitching her work to big clients. She'd freeze up, convinced she'd be laughed out of the room. We practiced mindful breathing before her pitches, and she visualized success, drawing inspiration from Beyoncé. Beyoncé has shared how she created her alter ego, Sasha Fierce, to overcome stage fright early in her career. Jessica adopted a similar mindset, imagining herself as a confident design rock star. Over time, she landed major contracts, including one with a Fortune 500 company. Another strategy is to reframe fear as excitement. Physiologically, fear and excitement are nearly identical: racing heart, sweaty palms. So, tell yourself, I'm not scared, I'm thrilled for this opportunity. I did this before my first TEDx talk. I was shaking backstage, but I reframed it as, this is my chance to share my message. That mental shift turned my nerves into energy, and the talk went viral online. Fear doesn't disappear, but you can harness it to propel you forward. That's such a game changer, turning fear into excitement. I'm sure our listeners are taking notes. Rachel, you've mentioned some incredible figures like Beyoncé and Malala. Are there other famous examples that inspire you when it comes to overcoming fear? Oh, absolutely, Emily. History is full of people who faced fear head-on and came out stronger. Take Nelson Mandela, for instance. He spent 27 years in prison for fighting apartheid, facing daily fear of violence and despair. Yet, he emerged with a vision for reconciliation, saying, "The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." Mandela's courage to face his fears not only freed him, but transformed a nation. Another example is Serena Williams, who's spoken about the fear of failure in her tennis career. After losing matches early on, she feared she'd never live up to her potential. But Serena reframed failure as feedback, using it to refine her game. Her 23 Grand Slam titles are proof of what's possible when you push past fear. These stories remind me that fear is universal, but so is the capacity to overcome it. On a personal note, I once coached a young entrepreneur named Ethan, who feared launching his tech startup because he'd seen friends' ventures fail. We talked about how Steve Jobs faced fear when he was ousted from Apple, the company he co-founded. Jobs could have given up, but he channeled that fear into creating Pixar and Next, eventually returning to lead Apple to new heights. Ethan took this to heart, launched his app, and within a year, it had over 50,000 users. Stories like these show that fear is just a signal to prepare and persist. Those are such compelling examples. Mandela, Serena, Jobs, they all faced fear in their own way and came out on top. Rachel, what about the fear of judgment? I think a lot of us worry about what others will think. How can we overcome that? The fear of judgment is incredibly common, Emily, because we're wired to seek acceptance. But letting others' opinions dictate your choices is like handing over the steering wheel of your life. To overcome this, start by grounding yourself in your values. Ask, what matters most to me, and does this fear align with that? Often, you'll realize the judgment you fear is less about you and more about others' insecurities. I think of Taylor Swift, who's faced relentless scrutiny throughout her career, criticism about her music, her relationships, her every move. Early on, she admitted to fearing public backlash, but she learned to focus on her art and her fans. Swift said, "If you're trying to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one, including yourself." That mindset shift allowed her to evolve into a global icon. She's a reminder that you can't control what others think, but you can control how you respond. I faced this fear when I published my first book. I was terrified of negative reviews, imagining critics tearing it apart. So I worked with a mentor who taught me to focus on my why, helping people understand their emotions. I told myself, even if one reader finds value, it's worth it. The book became a bestseller, but more importantly, I learned to prioritize my mission over others' opinions. For listeners, try this. Write down one action you'd take if you weren't afraid of judgment. Then do it. You'll be amazed at how liberating it feels. That's such sage advice, and Taylor Swift's journey really brings it home. Rachel, sometimes fear isn't just about one big moment, it's a recurring obstacle. How do we build long-term resilience to keep facing our fears? Building resilience against fear is like training a muscle. It takes consistent effort, but gets stronger over time. One key is to normalize fear. Accept that it's part of being human, not a sign of weakness. I love how Brené Brown, the vulnerability expert, talks about fear. She says, "You can't take courage without walking through vulnerability." By embracing fear as a companion to growth, you strip away its power to paralyze you. Another strategy is to create a fear-facing habit. Start small. Maybe it's speaking up in a meeting or trying a new hobby. Each time you act despite fear, you build confidence. I did this with public speaking. After my first shaky talk, I committed to one speaking gig a month, no matter how small. By year's end, I was comfortable addressing hundreds. I draw inspiration from Michelle Obama, who shared how she overcame self-doubt as First Lady. She'd remind herself, "I'm prepared and I belong here." That mantra helped her shine on the global stage. I also recommend journaling your fears. Write about what scares you and how you've handled it before. I worked with a client, Olivia, a nurse who feared transitioning to a leadership role because she doubted her skills. We journaled her past successes, like handling emergencies with calm precision. She realized she'd already conquered big fears, which gave her the courage to take the promotion. Today, she's a hospital director. Finally, surround yourself with encouragers, friends, mentors, or even podcasts like this one that remind you fear is conquerable. Those tips are gold, Rachel. Normalizing fear and building habits around it feels so doable. As we near the end, what's one final piece of advice for listeners who want to start overcoming their fears today? My biggest advice is to take one brave step right now. It doesn't have to be monumental, just something that nudges you out of your comfort zone. I think of Jeff Bezos, who left a cushy finance job to start Amazon in his garage. He faced the fear of failure, but took the leap, driven by a vision. That first step changed everything. For me, it was signing up for that first Toastmasters meeting, trembling as I walked in. Each step builds momentum. One last story. I coached a woman named Sophie, a single mom who feared going back to school for a law degree at 40. She worried she was too old, that she'd fail her kids. I encouraged her to enroll in just one class. 3 years later, Sophie graduated top of her class and now advocates for underserved communities. If Sophie can face her fears, so can you. Act today, trust your strength, and let fear be your guide, not your jailer. What an uplifting way to close, Rachel. Sophie's story, along with all the icons you've mentioned, reminds us that courage is within reach. Thank you for sharing such profound insights and practical tools. I know our listeners are inspired to take action. Thank you, Emily, and to everyone listening. I hope you feel ready to face your fears and chase your dreams with boldness. And that's it for today's episode of Journey to Success. If you loved this conversation, and I know you did, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Share this with a friend who needs a dose of courage, and join us next time for more stories and strategies to fuel your journey. Until then, keep stepping bravely forward.